This is TWiT.
This is indeed the top story because as things are really slow, well, it's the best time to come out and announce a renewed partnership. Oppo, OnePlus have officially announced that they are joining forces. It's no longer a will they, won't they kind of partnership. It's no longer a we know you guys are seated right next to each other and you talk to each other a little bit. It's officially OnePlus is a little sub-brand now of Oppo. And so you can think of OnePlus as that little arm that's just reaching out, little tendon,
little
just
arm
hanging
that's
there.
just hanging off the shoulder.
Just hanging. Yeah. So last week, Pete Lau, who is one of the original founders of OnePlus and actually came over from Oppo like years ago from an executive position, he announced that OnePlus and Oppo were merging together. This was in a nice little forum post in the OnePlus forums, so you can go read it if you're interested. The overall objective of this merger is to bring, quote, faster and more stable software updates to OnePlus devices. So that made a lot of folks really happy because I went through the Reddit threads of the last couple of years this afternoon, and a lot of you were very upset with the update timeline for your OnePlus phones. So
no kidding.
Now there's resources for a bigger team, so that's a good news. Android 11 was, of course, very delayed, and we're just around the corner from Android 12, so I'm sure many of you don't want to wait. Now, some questioned if OnePlus would stick with Oxygen OS or if Oppo would kind of put its Color OS on there instead, which, as a side note, I don't think is as bad as people make it out to be, but that's for another day. Now, Oxygen OS is going to stay on the OnePlus so far. Pete Lau actually said in that same thread that there was no plans to take it out of this market here in the US where it is right now. So that's good news. Now, a little context here. Remember last year, Carl Pei left, went to go start his startup. Nothing.
I was gonna say, Flo, do you think this is why Carl Pei left?
It's always the question, isn't it?
Yes. And listen, so I wrote about this today at gizmodo.com. I wrote a little ditty, which I want to, kind of point it to you guys as a question. But what I wanted to mention in my write-up, but I have no evidence for this, is that I do think this is part of the reason why Carl Pei left, because this whole move, this is just my own personal thing. Just anecdotally, I'm coming at this. There's no scientific backing for this, so please do not quote me. This is just a podcaster just kind of musing aloud, is that I feel one of the reasons maybe that contributed possibly to Carl Pei leaving, allegedly possibly maybe, is, OnePlus is clearly going for propagation here. We see that with all these new Nord devices that have been spawning around the world. There's global versions that kind of exist only in certain markets. And, when you're coming from a startup that was trying to position itself as the phone that you never settle for, could probably a change of ethos maybe is why Carl left to go do nothing.
Listen, I love the speculating of why Carl Pei left.
Complete
OnePlus.
Speculation.
I know.
Speculation.
I love it. I love it. He left. When did he leave? Like a year ago?
Yeah.
Ish,
right?
Yeah. Something like that,
Ish. Yeah, there's no way this is why. He left. I see this Oppo thing as maybe the net result of him leaving and the shakeup that kind of started.
8 months
ago.
That's good.
Yeah, but there's no I can't imagine that him leaving and then a year later the reason why you know what I mean? Like that doesn't add up for me.
I mean,
This is why
it was 8 months
don't put
ago.
it in the article.
Yeah. 8 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I do want to poise, guys. My brain is a little off today. I do want to pose the question to you guys.
Pause it.
Thank you. Whatever. Do you guys think that this is the end of the enthusiast phone? Because I feel like OnePlus existed in this nice little niche for the last couple of years where it sort of took over for the role of the next devices. It kind of came through with the same kind of hype. And now it's clearly headed for a slightly different, more Samsung and even, dare I say, Motorola direction, you know?
When you say that, are you saying that OnePlus was the enthusiast phone and now it seems as if it's probably not going to be, will there be a replacement? Is that the question? Like a replacement? Or
is this like...
Or is this the end of OnePlus, their reign as the enthusiast phone?
Yeah, that plus, do you think that it's just, all about selling? I mean, it's always about selling phones, but...
Sure.
Yeah.
I think that's
I'm
the case for
wondering
OnePlus, absolutely.
No, I think
just
it's
wonder
part
if
of,
we're still having this edge.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's, I don't know. I think yes and no. I think the enthusiast phone aspect, it might be a little overblown now as we're like so far along. Like early on, it was more niche and more of that sort of stuff. But as they've grown, as they've expanded, maybe that's why Carl Play left, because they're trying to go even bigger and become more like a Samsung. But with all like the idea of an Android enthusiast phone, OnePlus wasn't the be all end all of that. I mean, I see Xiaomi with a lot of the R&D and a lot of the craziness and the stuff like that they're doing. I think they're continuing that. And there's no reason. What I find interesting in Flo, and I defer to you because you've written about this, you know a lot more about this. Why is this bad? If Oppo has already, is Oppo some big bad that I don't know enough about that I should feel threatened by this? If anything, they were already in bed with Oppo from day one.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Yeah.
So what's going to change?
That's been the long-standing question mark, is how deep does this go with Oppo? And I think that's maybe part of the reason for the reaction is now there's like this particular moment to point to say, see, I knew there was a thing with OnePlus and Oppo, and we've heard about it in little bits and pieces here and there, and now we're there. But you're right, Ron. Like, what does it actually mean? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I don't actually know what it means for the brand, but I'm not certain it's going to change a whole lot because OnePlus will still exist as a OnePlus, even though they're more underneath Oppo. It's just more of a solidifying, as far as I can tell through what they've released here, it's just more of a solidifying of the teams at a time where a lot of companies have had to really refocus and understand how they do business in 2021 based on the way the last year especially, but the last couple of years have been. It's just kind of forced these companies to look at their business in different ways, and to a certain degree, this makes sense. It's a smart move if they combine and focus efforts. It's probably a really great thing for the company. I think it remains to be seen what it means for OnePlus. I'd be really surprised if OnePlus went away, but I think OnePlus as an enthusiast brand is that ship has sailed. I don't think that OnePlus really is as much of an enthusiast brand as it was, and that isn't a now thing. That's a last couple of years thing.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, if anything, I feel like this potentially protects OnePlus from the past year and the insanity by having a little more security with Oppo being firmly behind them. That's just, I don't know. I this doesn't feel like a Microsoft, we acquired them and now we're going to shut them down kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. Although
this feels,
who the heck knows?
Well, I was going to say this feels a lot, and I had mentioned this in my article, this feels a lot like Oppo's attempt to kind of stay in the US and be that player, because as we see, the Biden administration is not backing down from the sort of bans that were put on some Chinese companies. So why come into a market that is kind of, not open?
Yeah, that's true. Although very tangentially related, there was the news that Honor had mentioned that they're going to be bringing Google Apps back to their phones with the new 50 series. So there is a little bit of a shift in what's going on with some of the Chinese phones and how they're able to interact with U.S. companies. At least there's that. Honor is in a position where they are bringing the Google experience back into their devices. So who knows? Maybe that's going to change with some of these other players as well. But that's kind of a side note.